Right. Then welcome everyone. Good morning once again. So today we are starting off with a new chapter, chapter number 10. Here we are going to talk about e-commerce, digital markets, and digital goods. Right. Maybe some of you have some sort of idea regarding these areas. These are buzzwords that are very popular these days, right? Areas that have gained a lot of attention in the present context. So we are going to look at this interesting area in chapter number 10. Right. First, let's take a look at what our learning outcomes of this chapter are. First, we are going to identify the unique features of e-commerce, digital markets, and digital goods. So unlike the traditional markets and the traditional economics and the traditional goods and services that we are familiar with, when it comes to e-commerce, we understand some unique features which are different from that of the usual economics that we know. අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් දන්න සාම්ප්‍රදායික ආර්ථික විද්‍යාවේදී හෝ සාම්ප්‍රදායික වාණිජ්‍ය කටයුතු වලදී අපි දකින ලක්ෂණ වලට වඩා වෙනස් ලක්ෂණ අපි ඔබ්සර්ව් කරනවා e-commerce වලදී සහ ඒ ආශ්‍රිත වෙළඳපළවල් සහ ඒ භාණ්ඩ හා සේවා වලදී digital භාණ්ඩ හා සේවා වලදී. එතකොට ඒවා ගැන අපි ඉගෙන ගන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. Then secondly, describe how internet technology has changed business models. Same way I explained earlier, traditional business models have greatly changed due to the advent of internet and related technologies. Due to these digital disruptions that we talk about, digital innovations, new technologies constantly being reinvented, and also added to all of that, the concept of networking, the concept of internet has created a lot of change in the usual landscape in doing business. The business that we used to do 20 years back is not the same as it was today, right? A lot of changes have happened, and we are going to look at some of them. And also, we are going to identify the various types of e-commerce and explain how e-commerce has changed consumer retailing and business-to-business transactions. Now, e-commerce can be classified according to different types, right? Using different bases. We are going to look at one type of classification through this chapter. Also, at the same time, we are going to understand how the concept of e-commerce has changed the retailing landscape for consumers as well as businesses. Now, some of you may have heard we talk about these models in certain jargon such as B2B, B2C, C2C, right? So there are different models like that, different connections connecting the business community and the consumer community. So how e-commerce has changed these interactions and how it has changed these retailing patterns is something that we are going to look at. Then fourth, we are going to evaluate the role of m-commerce. What is m-commerce? It is, in other words, mobile commerce, right? So we are going to evaluate the role of m-commerce in business and describe the most important m-commerce applications. So we are going to pinpoint a few popular m-commerce or mobile commerce applications as well, in addition to understanding the role of mobile commerce in the modern day business scenario. Right. So moving ahead, what is simply e-commerce, right? This is a term that I'm pretty sure you all have heard of previously. මොකද්ද මේ e-commerce කියලා කියන අපි සිංහලෙන් කියන විද්‍යුත් වාණිජ්‍ය කියලා. What do we understand as e-commerce? It is the use of internet and the web to transact business. Using internet technologies and related networking and web technologies, when we use them to do business transactions, we simply refer to it as e-commerce, right? But if we try to expand this version a little bit and look at e-commerce, We can also understand this as more formally, e-commerce is about digitally enabled commercial transactions between and among organizations and individuals, right? So not any type of transactions. These transactions have to be digitally enabled. That means digital technologies have to be used in order to execute these transactions. අපි digital තාක්ෂණය යොදාගෙන සිද්ධ කරන ගනුදෙනු වෙන්න ඕනේ මේ ගනුදෙනු. ඒ වගේම යම් වාණිජ්‍යමය ස්වරූපයක් ගන්න ඩිජිටල් තාක්ෂණය භාවිතා කරලා කරන ගනුදෙනු වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ වගේම ආයතන අතර මේ ගනුදෙනු ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. තනි පුද්ගලයන් අතර ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේම යම් third parties අපි කියනවා තෙවන පාර්ශවයන් එක්ක ඇති වෙන ගනුදෙනු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Right? So that is the kind of picture that we talk about when we understand the concept of e-commerce, right? So it's not just simply buying and selling over the internet. අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් එහෙමනේ define කරන්නේ සාම්ප්‍රදායිකවදී නේද? but අපි එතනින් එහාට ගිහිල්ලා e-commerce දිහා බලන්න ඕනේ. මෙතන මේ transactions ඉතාම පුළුල් පරාසයක විදින transactions වෙන්න පුළුවන්. සමහර අවස්ථාවන් වලදී මේවා තොරතුරු සැපයීමේ ආකෘති තියෙනවා ගනුදෙනුකරුවන් සහ ව්‍යාපාර ආයතන අතර. ඒ වගේ ආකෘති those kinds of setups that are available for exchanging of information also can be included within these kinds of within this landscape, right? Okay. So let's take a look at the history of e-commerce, right? How the concept of e-commerce evolved. So e-commerce started becoming popular way back in 1990s, right? Early 1990s. So it is believed that it began in 1995 and it gradually grew after that up till today, right? And it's still growing. And the very rapid growth in e-commerce in the early years created a market bubble in e-commerce stocks. Now, this is something interesting that happened at the beginning of this concept of e-commerce, right? When internet became popular and when internet became widespread and when internet and networking was accessible by anyone worldwide, right? E-commerce also started gaining attention. As a result, it created a bubble in e-commerce stocks, right? So what is this bubble that we are referring to in e-commerce? So essentially what happened here was, this is also referred to as the dot-com bubble, right? In the early 1990s, with this popularity of the concept of e-commerce, මේ e-commerce කියන සංකල්පය ප්‍රසිද්ධ වෙන්න පටන් ගත්තත් එක්කම මිනිස්සු හිතන්න ගත්තා මේකට ගොඩක් හොඳ potential එකක් තියෙනවා. අපිට මේ e-commerce follow කරොත් එහෙම නැත්නම් අපේ businesses මේ ආකෘතියට අපි හරව ගත්තොත් එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ වගේ ව්‍යාපාරවල අපි invest කරොත්, if we convert our business to e-commerce models or if we invest in these kinds of business models more and more, there will be a huge growth in profits. That's how people assumed, right? And true, e-commerce actually did show a lot of potential for the future, right? So as a result, what happens was people extensively started investing in these kinds of businesses, in these kinds of internet related companies. The investments grew by a huge amount, right? But what happened was within this dot-com bubble, or we also sometimes refer to it as tech bubble, right? Or we call it the dot-com boom sometimes, right? මේ තැන්වලදී මොකද්ද වුනේ? මේ internet technology සහ related businesses වල end investments වැඩි කරා විශේෂයෙන්ම startup companies වගේ ඒ වගේ වැඩි වශයෙන් මිනිස්සු invest කරන්න ආයෝජනය කරන්න පෙළඹුණා. But what was the issue? Now, when a lot of startups came into the picture and a lot of businesses started going digital, a lot of traditional businesses started converting themselves to digital. Traditional to digital conversion was very high. So when there was a lot of investments made in the startups, the issue was after some time, the growth did not happen as they expected, right? Sometimes these businesses, they didn't have a proper plan. They didn't have a proper future outlook, right? Their products or services that they were that they sold online did not match with their business models to be operated in this kind of digital environment or to be operated in e-commerce based setting, right? And they did not have a proper record of their profits or revenue. There were many issues like this, right? And therefore, what happened was the rise that people expected out of these investments did not realize as they expected. යාලා බලාපොරොත්තු වුණ තරම් ආයෝජයන්ගේ ප්‍රතිලාභ තිබෙන්නේ නැහැ. හේතුව අපේක්ෂා කරපු තරම් මට්ටමකට මේ කියන e-commerce businesses වල වර්ධනයක් growth එකක් යාලා observe කරේ නැහැ. මෙයාලට සමහර වෙලාවට business plan එකේ issues නිසා, පුරෝකථනයන්ගේ තිබෙන වැරදි නිසා, ඒ වගේ හේතු ගණනාවක් නිසා කොහොම හරි අන්තිමට මොකද වුනේ? මේ .com bubble එක, this .com bubble burst, right? So as a result, a lot of companies faced a huge failure, right? But although some companies did fall down, some companies were able to withstand the fall. Some companies were able to face the change in a bold way, right? They were prepared for what was to come in the future. But majority of the companies foresaw a fall, right? So that's why here it is mentioned, like all bubbles, the .com bubble burst in March 2001, right? So like I mentioned earlier, a large number of e-commerce companies failed during this process. Yet for many others, such as Amazon, eBay, Expedia, and Google, the results have been more positive. So although a lot of companies faced failures, still some companies were able to sustain, such as Amazon. Amazon මුල්ම කම්පනි එක කියලා අපි හඳුන්වන්නේ නේද? මේ රීටේල් එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ ට්‍රැඩිෂනල් රීටේල් මොඩල් එක ඩිජිටල් එන්වයරන්මන්ට් එකකට ගෙන එහෙම නැත්නම් e-commerce මොඩල්ස් වලට ගේන්න ඒ බවට පත් කරන්න මූලික වුණ පුරෝගාමියෙක් කියලානේ අපි හඳුන්වන්නේ Amazon නේද? එතකොට මේ වගේ companies, ඒ වගේම eBay වගේ setups, then Expedia, right? This travel agency based business models, and even Google, right? They were able to sustain because they knew how to correctly position their products and services on the internet, how to correctly understand their market, and how to correctly push or gradually, let's say, no, rather than using the word push, how to correctly foresee what the consumers wanted, right? Having a good idea about what the consumer demand was like and catering to that consumer demand accurately, and also keeping a good record of their performance, right? So likewise, due to a lot of positive reasons like this, these business models were able to sustain and they were able to grow, right? So then this picture shows the figure 10.1 shows the growth of e-commerce, right? Now, when you see the period between 2008 and 9, right? So there has been a growth from the advent from 1995 up to 2007, and then during this period there's a stagnation. The growth has stalled up to some percentage. The method මොකද වෙලා තියෙන, this era was when the global economic recession happened. I believe you have heard about this. I believe you have read about this or come across this at some point in your degree program. So during this recession period, we see a stalling, or the growth has rather stagnated, right? But until this period, it is said to have grown at a rate between 15 to 25%, right? Growth rate. And then after that, once again, in 2012, e-commerce revenues are growing again at an estimated 15% annually, as estimated. But also, there was a forecast that the similar growth rate, based on that 15% growth rate, they foresaw, or they sort of forecasted that this would be the growth in the coming years, right? But actually, now, මෙතනින් එහාට මේ forecasts මෙයාලා සිද්ධ කරලා තියෙනවානේ 2012 වෙද්දී 15% වලින් annually growth එකක් තිබ්බා, ඒත් එක්ක මේ විදිහේ වර්ධනයක් තිබ්බා. But if we look at the one of the more recent reports by statista.com, right? Statista.com වලින් කරපු recent survey එකක් between 2014 and 2021 අතරේ සිද්ධ වෙච්ච survey එකකින් retail market එකේ. I will share with you those statistics, right? Yeah, now these are from statista.com, right? From 2014 to 2021. So you see what the growth has been like. Now these have been after 2021. These are forecasted revenue figures, right? And the sales value is shown in billions of US dollars. So you can see by how much it has grown, right? An exponential growth is expected when it comes to 2025. If you calculate the growth rate between these years, you can see how the forecasted rates have actually behaved over the years, right? So coming back to our lesson, now with this understanding, we are going to learn a few unique features of these e-commerce technologies. I told you, rather than traditional commerce, අපි සාම්ප්‍රදායික වාණිජ්‍යයේදී කතා කරනවට වඩා විද්‍යුත් වාණිජ්‍යයේදී අපි විශේෂිත වෙච්ච ලක්ෂණ කීපයක් අඳුනා ගන්නවා e-commerce වලට ආවේනික වෙච්ච, right? So the first one, what is the first one? It is ubiquity, right? Yeah, let me put this in presenter mode. Yeah, I think the image is clear to you. Please let me know if it's not, if the slide is not clear to you, right? Because it looks like there's some sort of network disturbance on my end, right? Okay. So coming back to our discussion, so what is this ubiquity that we are talking about? අපි මේකට සිංහලෙන් කියනවා සර්වත්‍රතාවය කියලා, right? මොකද්ද මෙතෙන්දි වෙන්නේ? Let's look at the description here. E-commerce is available just about everywhere at all time. සරලවම කිව්වොත් everywhere, anytime, anywhere. එහෙම කියලා කියන්න වෙන්නේ නේද? Right. ඒ වගේ ලක්ෂණයක් තමයි මේ ubiquity කියලා කියන්නේ. If we explain that a little bit more. Sorry. It makes possible to shop from your desktop, at home, at work, or even from your car using smartphones. That is true, right? E-commerce is available to anyone at any given time, at any given place, right? Ubiquity. So, ගෙදර ඉඳන් මොකක් හරි භාණ්ඩයක් හෝ සේවාවක් මිලදී ගන්න අවශ්‍ය වුණත්, ඔයා බස් එකක යන ගමන් වුණත්, එහෙම නැත්නම් වෙනස් ස්ථානයක ඉඳන් වුණත්, your access to e-commerce is not curtailed, or your access to e-commerce is not restrained. There's no barrier for you to access these services. නේ ඔයාට හිතන ඕනෑම තැනක ඉඳන් ඕනෑම අවස්ථාවක ඔයාට පුළුවන් simply ඔයාගේ smartphone එක පාවිච්චි කරලා සම්බන්ධ වෙන්න ඔයාට අවශ්‍ය විද්‍යුත් වාණිජ්‍ය සේවාවන් සමග නේද? right. so ඒ හැකියාව ඔයාට ලබා දෙනවා විද්‍යුත් වාණිජ්‍ය හරහා. that ability is given to you via e-commerce, right? Now because of this reason, marketplace is removed from specific geographic locations that we used to know sometime back. අපි කියනවා market spaces වෙනවා කියලා. Marketplaces started becoming market spaces, and it resulted in enhanced convenience for customers, right? Because of the concept of ubiquity, and also it considerably reduced the cost of shopping for consumers. දැන් ඔයාලා සාම්ප්‍රදායික මාකට් එකකදී අපි මාකට් ප්ලේස් කියන concept එක ගැන කතා කරනවානේ. යම්කිසි නිශ්චිත භූගෝලීය ප්‍රදේශයකට සීමා වෙච්ච බිස්නස් එකක් නෙමෙයි අපි තවදුරටත් දකින්නේ. අපි මේක එතනින් එහාට අතික්‍රමණය වෙලා සීමාවකින් යන්නේ භූගෝලීය සීමාවකින් එහාට ගියපු බිස්නස් එකක් ගැන තමයි අපි දැන් කතා කරන්නේ. right? And also you as consumers may have experienced this, that your shopping cost. Now, your shopping cost may include the time you spend for shopping, your transportation, right? Your searching cost, all of these things are in fact a part of your shopping cost, right? But due to the advent of e-commerce, these shopping costs can be considerably lower for the consumers. You can easily shop from anywhere at any time. Right. So then the second one is global reach. What does that talk about? E-commerce technology permits commercial transactions to cross cultural and national boundaries far more conveniently and cost effectively than is true in traditional commerce. Now, very much closer to the concept of ubiquity. අපි මේ ubiquity කියලා හඳුනාගත්ත concept එකට වඩාත් සමීප එතනින් එහාට යන concept එකක් තමයි global reach කියලා කියන්නේ. Global reach එකේදී මොකද්ද වෙන්නේ? අපිට national boundaries, cultural boundaries වල අතික්‍රමණයක් දකින්නට පුළුවන්. Right? We are no longer bounded by our cultural limits or say boundaries. We are no longer bound by our national boundaries. අපි එක රටකට කොටු වෙලා ඉන්නේ නැහැ, එක culture එකකට කොටු වෙලා ඉන්නේ නැහැ. We can transact with the entire world and we can do it more conveniently. And the reason why there is a sustenance in this concept, or the reason why we still see that these technologies persist or these technologies continue to thrive is because they offer more convenience. දැන් අපිට උදාහරණයකට දැන් නම් රටේ තත්ත්වයක් එක්ක යම් වෙනස්කම් සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙනවා. නමුත් සාමාන්‍ය තත්ත්වයක් යටතේ අපිට දැන් උදාහරණයට ඔයගොල්ලන් AliExpress platform එකේ සමහරට ගනුදෙනු කරනවා ඇති. eBay platforms වල ගනුදෙනු කරනවා ඇති. So when you're operating on these platforms like AliExpress, essentially you are not limited to a supplier from our country, right? You are importing products from, let's say, China. A Chinese manufacturer, a Chinese entrepreneur is selling products to you. So you're not limited to geographical boundaries of Sri Lanka only. So why is this model successful? Because you can do it very conveniently, right? So even if the global reach was there, if it was not convenient for you, ඔයාට ඒ සඳහා access වෙන්න අපහසුයක් තිබ්බනම් ඔයාට ඒ සඳහා conveniently ඒ transaction එක කරගන්න බැරි වුණා නම් ඔයා ඒ තැනට යන්නේ නැහැනේ. නමුත් මේ models තවදුරටත් රඳා පවතින එක ගොඩක් conveniently consumersලට ඒ සේවය ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන නිසා. ඒතර මේ global reach කියන එකත් unique feature එකක් අපිට e-commerce නිසාම ලැබෙනවා. අපි සාමාන්‍ය සාම්ප්‍රදායික ගනුදෙනු වලදී global reach කියන එක සාමාන්‍ය consumer කෙනෙක්ට ලබා ගන්න අපහසු දෙයක් නේ. Maybe it's possible, but it's very difficult, right? It's not at the convenience of our fingertips. So therefore, we identify global reach also as one of the unique features of e-commerce, right? So, these markets can potentially include not hundreds, not thousands, millions, and billions of consumers out there in the world. And the potential for you to access suppliers is not in hundreds, not in thousands, it's in millions, right? So that is the interesting thing about this global reach, right? So as we go along, if anything is not clear to you, or if you have questions, you can always raise them, right? ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් ඔයගලන්ට ඒවා අහන්න පුළුවන්. Right. The third unique feature of e-commerce. What is it? Universal standards. Right. What is universal standards? What does it mean? Here the point explains e-commerce is available. Here the point explains the technical standards for conducting e-commerce are universal standards. Right. That means wherever you are in the world, you use the same technical standards to connect to the internet. You use the same technical standards to transact with business organizations. Or if you're a business, it is the same technical standard that you are using to connect with your customers, no matter where you are. ඉන්දියාවේ හිටියත්, චීනයේ හිටියත්, ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ හිටියත්, ඩෙන්මාර්ක් වල හිටියත්, USA වල හිටියත්, same internet standards, same technical standards සමා ඔයා පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ අන්තර්ජාලයට හා සමග සම්බන්ධ වෙන්න, ඒ වගේම මේ ගනුදෙනු කටයුතු සිද්ධ කරන්න. That's what we understand as universal standards, right? So even computer systems that are different, right? These disparate computer systems can easily communicate with one another due to these universal standards, right? And because of this, there has apparently arisen lower market entry cost. Then මේ universal standards වෙනස් නම් අපිට පහසුවෙන් මේ ගනුදෙනු කටයුතු කරන්න වෙන්නේ නැහැනේ නේ. දැන් උදාහරණයකට චයිනාවල ඉන්න කෙනෙක් ඉන්ටර්නෙට් එකට කනෙක්ට් වෙනකොට එයා පාවිච්චි කරන ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ්ස් උයි ශ්‍රී ලංකාවල ඉන්න කෙනෙක් පාවිච්චි කරන ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ්ස් උයි එකිනෙකට වෙනස් නම් මේ ගනුදෙනු කරන්න භාවිතා කරන ටෙක්නිකල් මෙකැනිසම්ස් වෙනස් නම් එකිනෙකට එහෙනම් ඒ දෙන්න අතර compatibility එක ඇති වෙනවා අඩුයි නේ. And also the cost that they will have to adapt to, there will be a cost that they have to incur in order to adapt to similar standards between the two countries, right? But it's not so. Because of this characteristic of universal standard, with a very low entry cost, the merchants can enter the market, and they can bring their products and services to the market at very low entry costs. And also on the part of the consumers, the search cost of consumers, like I mentioned earlier, has also become lower because of these universally accepted standards. That is the effort that a consumer has to put forward in order to search for products, search for services, search for suppliers. It has also considerably reduced because of these universal standards. Right. Then the next characteristics we are going to talk about is richness. මොකද්ද මේ richness කියලා කියන්නේ? මොකද්ද rich media කියලා කියන්නේ? The web makes it possible to deliver rich messages with text, audio, and video simultaneously to large numbers of people. Then මේ internet එකේ presence එකත් එක්ක අපි කතා කරනවා මේ rich media ගැන. The rich media is a collection of multiple versions of media, like not only text, right? Then අපි ඉස්සර නම් advertising කරද්දී traditional marketing setting එකක අපිට මේ rich media පාවිච්චි කරන්න බෑනේ. අපි බොහෝ දුරට පුවත්පත් දැන්වීමක් පාවිච්චි කරලා advertise කරා වෙන්න පුළුවන් අපේ products and services, right? එහෙම නැත්නම් ගුවන් විදුලි පාවිච්චි කරලා advertise කරා වෙන්න පුළුවන්, රූපවාහිනී පාවිච්චි කරලා advertise කරා වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ගොඩක් වෙලාවට ඔය තුන අතරනේ circulation එකක් තිබෙන්නේ දැන් අවුරුදු ගණනාවකට ඉහත. But when it comes to the present context, the possibilities that businesses have to take their products to consumers and to tell to consumers about their products and services are very wide. They are very large, right? So because of this availability of multiple platforms, rather than using only text, rather than only using images, that were the case when we were listening to the radio and when we were using newspapers, there were only very limited amounts of media. Text, audio, image version එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් අද විදිහක ගොඩක් වෙලාට වර්ධනය වෙලා තියෙනවා මේ rich media කියන සංකල්පයත් එක්ක අපිට ගොඩක් පුළුල් පරාසයක් ඇතුළත different types of media එකවර අපිට consumer ට communicate කිරීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා. A wide range of media we have been able to simultaneously or at the same time communicate to multiple parties, right? So what kind of things are we talking about here? It makes it possible to shop from your desktop. Sorry, in rich media. So what has enabled this fact is actually the combination of different features such as text, audio, video, right? මේ වගේ combination එකක් එකතු කරලා එකවරකට හැකියාව තියෙනවා communicate කරන්න business organizations වලට consumers ලට, right? දැන් ඒ හැකියාව traditional settings වල අපිට තිබෙන්නේ නැහැ. Video, audio and text marketing messages can be embedded or they can be included, they can be integrated into single marketing messages because of this concept of rich media or richness, and they can be delivered to consumers with a increased consumer experience, a better consumer experience as well. දැන් ඔයාලා සරලවම ගත්තොත් ඔයගලන් Facebook එකේ scroll කරද්දී ඔයගලන්ට sponsored advertisement එකක් එනවා. Okay, text තියෙනවා, audio තියෙනවා, video තියෙනවා, right? It's a combination of all these types of media. Simply just 1 minute video එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, 10 seconds, 30 seconds video, but a promotional message එක අපිට rich context එකක් ඇතුලේ customer ට deliver කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට අපි සාමාන්‍ය පුවත්පතක පළ කරන දැන්වීමකට වඩා අපි කියනවා මේකේ තියෙන interactivity එක වැඩි, consumer ට මේකෙන් ලැබෙන value එක වැඩි, එයාට consumer experience එක තවදුරටත් enhance වෙනවා කියලා අපි කතා කරනවා. Right, so that is about richness. Then the next one, interactivity. This is also something very interesting and something that has been enabled thanks to internet and networking technologies, which paved way for the emergence of e-commerce, right? So what do we understand as interactivity here? Excuse me. So interactivity means e-commerce technologies are interactive, meaning they allow for two-way communication between merchant and consumer. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි දැන් සාම්ප්‍රදායික setting එකකදී advertising එහෙම නැත්නම් promotions ගත්තොත් එහෙම ගොඩක් වෙලාට one way linear communication එකක් තමයි තියෙන්නේ. නමුත් වර්තමානයේ වෙද්දී එහෙම නැහැ. නේ? merchant එහෙම නැත්නම් seller ප්‍රතිචාර දක්වන්න එයත් එක්ක අන්තර්ක්‍රියා කරන්න හැකියාව තියෙනවා consumerට. It's not just one way. Now, if we saw a newspaper advertisement, it's just flat one-way communication. If the consumer wanted to interact with the seller, maybe they had to write a postcard or a letter or contact the advertising agency and write to the paper, write to the merchant, right? During traditional settings. It was same the case because in the radio, interactivity is very low. අපිට දැන් රේඩියෝ එකක කෙනෙක් කතා කරලා අපිට කවුරු හරි කෙනෙක් ඇඩ්වර්ටයිස් කරද්දී අපිට රේඩියෝ ඇඩ්වර්ටයිස්මන්ට් එකත් එක්ක ඉන්ටරැක්ට් වෙන්න බැහැනේ නේ. TV advertisements උනත් එහෙමයි. But today the landscape has grown. Think of Facebook, Instagram, think of TikTok, think of YouTube. මේ platforms ඔක්කොම ගත්තොත් මේ වගේ පුළුල් platforms හදලා දීලා පුළුල් අවකාශයක් හදලා දීලා තියෙනවා businesses වලට interactivity එක වැඩි කරන්න consumers ලත් එක්ක. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට කවුරු හරි post කරනවා නම් Facebook එකේ, if someone posts, a business posts images of their products, right? You as a consumer can easily view the product and put your comments, right? You can ask for questions. You can ask whether this size is available. Is this color available? Or when will there be new stocks arriving at your business? You can comment and you can post your reviews even if you don't like the product, or your comments on the product, your thoughts on the product. All of these things you can put, or you can, like, at the real time, even as soon as they post the picture, you can comment. You don't have to wait days or months. It's just a matter of seconds. You can interact with the seller himself or the seller herself, right? So that interactivity is highly available in e-commerce, right? Two-way communications or interactions are being permitted because of e-commerce. Then we talk about information density. තොරතුරු ඝනත්වය කියලා අපි කියනවා සිංහලෙන්. So what happens here under information density? The internet and the web vastly increase information density, the total amount and quality of information available to all market participants, consumers, and merchants alike, right? That means the amount of information that we can make available for the consumers, right? And the amount of information that we make available regarding our products and services in different marketplaces for different market participants, and even for business organizations or merchants, has grown because of the advent of e-commerce, right? Now, the essential characteristic, an essential characteristics of e-commerce and related markets is that you have to make more information available than in a traditional market setting. Can anyone tell me why? දැන් අපි සාම්ප්‍රදායික මාකට් එකකට වඩා අපි කියනවා e-commerce based markets වල, එහෙම නැත්නම් e-commerce තාක්ෂණය පාවිච්චි කරලා භාණ්ඩ හා සේවා වෙළඳාම් කරන වෙළඳුන්, ඒ වගේ ව්‍යාපාර ගොඩාක් දුරට අපි දකිනවා ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් ප්‍රමාණයක් අවේලබල් කරනවා යාළගේ ප්‍රොඩක්ට් සහ සර්විස් සම්බන්ධයෙන් නේ. නමුත් මේ තරම් ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් අපි සාමාන්‍ය ට්‍රැඩිෂනල් සුපර් මාකට් එකකට ගිහින් භාණ්ඩයක් හෝ සේවාවක් මිලදී ගනිද්දී ඒ තරම් ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් ප්‍රමාණයකට අපිට ඇක්සස් නැහැ. ඇයි මේකට හේතුව? ඒ කියන්නේ I will put it this way. Now traditional market එකක අපි products or services භාණ්ඩ මිලදී ගනිද්දී අපිට ඒ ගැන අහලා දැනගන්න පුළුවන් විස්තර, right? එහෙම නැත්නම් අපිට ඒ දැන්වීම් ලේබල් එක කියවලා බලලා, එහෙම නැත්නම් ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එක අතට අරගෙන බලලා ඒක ගැන අපිට satisfaction තියනවද කියන එක අපිට අඳුන ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් වලට access නැහැ නෙවෙයි, sorry, ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් වලට access වැඩි අපිට සාම්ප්‍රදායික මාකට් එකකදී. මොකද හේතුව අපිට භාණ්ඩයත් එක්ක interact වෙන්න පුළුවන් හැකියාව වැඩි. දැන් මට ගිහලා කාර් එකක් මිලදී ගන්න ඕනේ නම් මට කාර් එක දිහා බලන්න පුළුවන් නේ. ඒක මට එහෙන් දකින්න පුළුවන්. මට ඒකේ performance එක බලන්න පුළුවන්. මට test drive එකකට ගිහිල්ලා බලන්න පුළුවන්. right? මට merchant ගෙන් මූණට මූණ හම්බෙලා විස්තර ගන්න පුළුවන්. මම සුපර් මාකට් එකකට ගිහිල්ලා අපි හිතමු මම මිලදී ගන්නවා මොකක් හරි භාණ්ඩයක් හෝ සේවාවක්. right? shampoo එකක්, cream එකක් කියලා හිතන්න. නැත්නම් මම shop එකකට ගිහලා watch එකක් මිලදී ගන්නවා. ඒතර මටම ඒක සියසින් දැක බලාගෙන ඒ product එක experience කරලා physically merchant එක interact වෙලා මට මගේ purchasing decision එක පිළිබඳව තොරතුරු ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් ඉන්ටර්නෙට් එකේදී මේ හැකියාව අපිට තියනවද නැද්ද? What do you think about buying or selling over internet? When you buy something over internet, what's the difference? Yes, what is your idea? ඔගලන් e-commerce platform එකක් කරහා භාණ්ඩයක් හෝ සේවාවක් මිලදී ගනිද්දී ඒ හැකියාව ඔයාලට තියනවද? What is the difference? What's your idea of that? Can anyone tell? So if you share your ideas with me, I can proceed on to the next explanation. What is your experience like? What do you think about that? Yes. Even if you haven't bought something, you must have some idea regarding this stuff. Yes, what do you think? Yes, can anyone tell? So if you can type in your answer or if you can unmute and speak, it's okay. Your answer can be right or wrong, but can you tell me what is the difference? I almost explained the difference to you. You only have a simple thing to think about. Yes, no idea, anyone? So it's obvious, right? In internet platform එකක් පාවිච්චි කරලා අපි consumer ව හම්බ වෙනකොට අපිට එයාත් එක්ක interact කරන්න තියෙන හැකියාව ගොඩක් අඩුයි physical market setting එකකට වඩා. Now don't think of the point of interactivity that I explained earlier. Physical interactivity is what I mean, right? Physically බාණ්ඩය හෝ සේවාව එක්ක හෝ ඒ සෙල එක්ක අපිට interact වෙන්න තියෙන ඉඩ ප්‍රස්තාව අඩුයි. As an overall අපිට ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ communications එක interact වෙන්න පුළුවන් වුණාට අපිට භාණ්ඩය හෝ සේවා පිළිබඳ තියෙන credibility එක ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ පිළිබඳව යම් ඇගයීමක් කරන්න පුළුවන් අවස්ථාව අඩුයි. We are essentially buying from someone that we possibly cannot see. Most of the cases we can't even physically see the product before we buy that, right? In these kinds of platforms. So then how can we build the trust? In order to build the trust, you have to provide a lot of information. Then ඔයාලා AliExpress එකට ගිහලා watch එකක් ගන්නදී ඒකෙන්ද තමයි ඒ watch එක අපි කියන්නේ හැම පැතිකඩකින්ම ඒගොල්ලන් ඡායාරූපගත කරලා ඒක පළ කරනවා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ වෙබ්සයිට් එකේනේ. හැම angle එකකින්ම ඔයගලන්ට බලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. product එකේ dimensions දානවා, right? product එක පිළිබඳ details, lengthy explanations are there. Then product reviews are there for you to see. So information density is high, right? And even the performance of the product. Then car එකක් වගේ ගත්තොත් එහෙම in addition to pictures ඒ car එකේ like test drive එකක් යන විදිය වීඩියෝ එකකුත් embed කරලා ඔයගලන්ට බලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. Online platform එකක් කරා නම් ඔයා මේ car එක ගැන consider කරන්නේ. So therefore the total amount of the data as well as the quality of data, the quality of information available has to be high in order for you to make a purchase decision with trust and more credibility, right? So that is why we say information density is another unique feature of e-commerce markets, right? So this creates greater transparency of price, right? Greater price transparency, greater cost transparency, and also it also enables sellers to engage in price discrimination. Now, price discrimination is actually a concept that we are going to talk about in the coming sections of the lecture. But for now, just have the thought or have the concept in your head, right? Then the next one. The seventh unique feature of e-commerce that we are going to talk about is personalization or customization. This is also a very unique and interesting feature enabled by yours truly, e-commerce. Why? Now, what happens in personalization actually? E-commerce technologies permit personalization. Merchants can target their marketing messages to specific individuals by adjusting the message to a person's clickstream behavior. Now, this is something very interesting, right? Now, let's assume you are searching for some sort of a product on the internet, right? You are interested in buying some product. right? And you are browsing a particular website, let's say, right? And you are clicking on the products that you like. Maybe let's say you're going to buy a shirt or a t-shirt, right? You are clicking between different types of shirts, different colors, different sizes, right? Different models. Maybe if you don't like that, you will close off and you will try another product, right? Likewise, your behavior on the internet can be tracked using these clicks that you place. or internet එකේ ඔයා click කරන වාරයක් පාසා ඒ clicks හරහා ඒ clicks කීපයකට අපි කියනවා click stream එකක් කියලා. right? මේ click streams හරහා internet එකේදී ඔයාගේ හැසිරීම track කිරීමේ හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා. right? So that is why here it is explained, merchants can target their marketing messages to specific individuals by adjusting the message to person's clickstream behavior. Name, interests, and past purchases. Or clickstream behavior එකට අමතරව ඔයාගේ නම, ඔයාගේ interest, ඔයාගේ past purchases, what you bought earlier. Maybe if you're buying with the same platform, or let's say AliExpress එකේ ඔයාගේ purchase behavior එක අනුව නැවත වතාවක් ඔයා AliExpress එකට පිවිසුනාම එයාලා customize කරලා ඔයාලට product recommendations දෙනවානේ. Product recommendations are provided in a customized manner based on your past preferences, past clicks, past purchases, and they greet you with your name when you revisit the website or when you revisit a platform like AliExpress, for instance, right? So a personalized service can be offered by merchants based on this. Not only over a single site, this personalization can happen over multiple sites as well. You know, we talk about these concepts like web crawling and all that. You don't need to know about highly technical details regarding that. But what happens here is, because of these kinds of new technologies, right? And data analytics have, improved. And because of all these things, what happened is, even your behavior across multiple websites, even your behavior across multiple platforms can be monitored. ඔයා මොකක් හරි අපිටම Facebook එකේ ඔයා මොකක් හරි එක වර්ගයක post එකක් එක්ක එහෙම නැත්නම් එක product category එකක් එක්ක වැඩි engagement එකක් පෙන්නනවා නම් merchants ලට හැකියාව තියෙනවා වර්තමානයේ වෙද්දී ඔයාගේ ඒ behavior උනත් detect කරලා ඔයාට ඔයාගේ purchase preference එකට ඔයා කැමැත්තක් දක්වපු ඔයා like කරපු ඔයා comment කරපු එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔයා share කරපු එහෙනම් ඔයා වැඩි වෙලාවක් බලාගෙන හිටපො right? ඔයා වැඩි වෙලාවක් යම් image එකක් දිහා බලාගෙන හිටියා නම් video එකක් දිහා බලාගෙන හිටියා නම් ඒක පවා detect කිරීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා වෙනම merchant කෙනෙක්ට ඒ product category එකට අදාළ right? ඒක වෙන විදිහ ගැන අපි කතා නොකරමු. There is a technical background to it attached to it, some very interesting technical background attached to it, how people do that, but it's really possible. Then ඔයා internet එකට යද්දී sponsored advertisements වලට එනවනේ නේ. කොහොමද එන්නේ? ඒ එන්නේ ඔයාගේ behavior එක monitor කිරීම නිසා. දැන් ඔයා කවුරු හරි අපි හිතමුකෝ උදාහරණයක් දැන් girls ලා නම් ඔයා sarees view කරා කියලා හිතමු කවුරු හරි එක merchant කෙනෙක්ගේ ඔයා sarees view කරාම තව මොහොතකින් ඔයා Facebook එකේ ඔයා news feed එක scroll කරද්දී ඔයා දකිනවා ඇති sponsored advertisements එනවා වෙන merchants ලාගේ වෙන saree sell කරන අයගෙන් වෙන pages වලින් ඔයාට sponsored advertisements එක දිගටම එනවනේ. So ඒ තමා ඔයාගේ behavior එක monitor කරන විදිහ මේ online environments වල. Right? So personalization happens. So it has happened in such a vast area, so much so that even mobile phone එක හරහා වුණා, right? Those kinds of personalizations happen. Right now, for example, think ඔයාට දැන් එනවැති සමහර වෙලාවට notifications ඔයාගේ text messages හැටියට Uber platform එකකින් pick me වලින් pick me food එහෙම නැත්නම් anything, right? Even Daraz or AliExpress ඔයා interact වෙච්ච ඕනම platform එකක් හරහා ඔයා සිද්ධ කරපු ගනුදෙනු මත පදනම් වෙලා ඔයා අයාලට ලබා දීලා තියෙන තොරතුරු මත පදනම් වෙලා right? ඔයාගේ profile එකක් හදාගන්න හැකියාව තියෙනවා ඒ business organizations වලට. ඔයාගේ නමේ ඉඳන් පටන් ගත්තාම customer persona එකක් ඒ businesses සතුව තියෙනවා ඔයා සම්බන්ධයෙන්. ඔයා කවුද කියන එක digital environment එකක් ඇතුළත ඔයාගේ personality එක මොන වගේද කියන එක ගැන මේ business organizations දන්නවා practically. right? ඉතින් ඒක පාවිච්චි කළ සමහර වෙලාවට ඔයාට notifications එන්න පුළුවන් නේ. ඔයාගේ past purchase behaviors අනුව සමහරකට SMS එකක් එනවා වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Let's say hello now who are the participants here? Hansini. Now hello Hansini, would you like to try out this new product? Oh hello Hansini, we have new arrivals in our shop, would you like to shop for these products? Oh අපි හිතමු Uber Eats හරි pick me food හරි නම් දවල් 12 වෙද්දි නැත්නම් හැන්දෑව 3-4 වෙද්දි personalized messages එනවා ඔයාගේ preference එක මත පදනම් වෙලා. Right? So that is the level to which it has come down to in the present context. Also, the technology permits customization, very close to personalization concept, right? Changing the delivered product or service based on the user's preference or prior behavior. ඔයා වැඩිපුර preference එකක් දක්වන්නේ යම් ආකාරයක products or services වලට නම් ඔයාට personalized message එකක් එනවා වගේම ඒක customize උත් වෙනවා. Not the general mass message that we communicate to anyone. අපි දැන් mass media වලදී උදාහරණයක් television advertisement එකකදී what we can do in a television advertisement is communicate a mass nature message to anyone and everyone. You cannot target consumers. It is a mass form of communication. Some amount of consumers will accept it or embrace it. Some amount of consumers will not. But you cannot correctly detect who is really interested in your product and who is not really interested. But because of e-commerce, you have the ability of really understanding and detecting who is honestly interested with your type of product. So based on that, you can customize and advertise your products and services like I mentioned earlier. So personalization and customization goes hand in hand in e-commerce platforms, right? Another very interesting and prominent feature of e-commerce, right? Then the final feature, the 8th feature we talk about is social technology. Social technology. So what happens here?